Okay, welcome everybody. I'll introduce myself in just a moment, but before I do that, we have a monitor that's out over here, and we're going to have just a few slides in just a moment. So if you want to make sure that you can see the slides, this monitor over here is working, and you may want to adjust your seating. Welcome to the meeting. My name is Sean Spano, and I'll be your facilitator tonight. This is the public scoping meeting for the Vallco Specific Plan Environmental Impact Report. So Sean Spano, I'm an independent facilitator. I'm not affiliated with the city, and I'm not affiliated with the consultant team that's here tonight. So I'm here to be your facilitator, moderate the conversation and the public input, and help with coordination and organization tonight. The agenda for our meeting tonight, I'm doing welcome and introductions now, and I'll talk about the meeting purpose in just a moment. Tonight's meeting is a somewhat technical meeting around the environmental impact report, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. But what we're looking for tonight is public comment on the scope and content of the environmental impact report. And this is the first stage, or one of the earlier stages, that has to happen to develop the specific plan. This meeting, in fact, is required by law that the city has this meeting to collect public input. We also will have another consultant walk us through the slides here, and that's Judy Shanley, and she's from David Powers and Associates. Jane was over at this station over here having to do, Jane's in charge of the environmental impact report in her firm, and she was over here at that station. Should also note that Jane Birdstead is here, and she's the traffic consultant. She will not be presenting tonight, but she'll be taking notes. As we walk through the agenda, we'll talk through the purpose of the meeting a little bit more specifically, the process, and then the schedule around the environmental impact report. And that will be a few slides that Jane will walk us through, not a lot of slides, just a few. And then that will tee us up for the key part of the meeting tonight, and you'll see that on the agenda, which is public comment on the scope of the EIR and the next steps. And that's the main focus of the meeting tonight. In fact, this is your meeting tonight. Staff and the consultant is here to hear from you. This is your opportunity to provide comments. In light of that, you have the speaker card that was on the front desk out front. So 3 ways to participate and provide comment tonight. Obviously, oral comment. Please fill out a speaker card. You'll see the top box there, speak only, and we'll have the microphone available for that, obviously. You might only want to provide written comments, and that's totally fine. On the back side of that, you see the space for written comments. If you want to provide written comments, there's a box out in the lobby. I'm seeing a staff person hold up the box right now, and you can put your comments in that box. If you do want to make oral comments, please fill out the speaker card and put that in the speaker tray over there. The third option, you might want to do both. You might want to provide oral comment and written comment on the back. And if you choose to do that, please put your speaker card up here so we can call you up for public comment. And I'll say a little bit more about that when we walk through the slides and get ready for the public comment period. I'm going to start this slide on meeting purpose. And so the purpose of the meeting tonight is to receive comments and input regarding, as I mentioned, the scope and content of the environmental impact report. As I mentioned, this meeting is required by law under CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act. So this is going to be a slightly different, I shouldn't even say slightly, it's going to be a different meeting than, say, the kickoff meeting that took place on February 5th. That was an open meeting. There were small groups. There was a lot of flexibility in the design of that meeting. That's not this meeting tonight. This meeting is a highly structured meeting. We will receive, staff and the consultant will receive comments from you, and that's the focus of the meeting tonight. There's not an opportunity for dialogue tonight. It's not the purpose of the meeting. It's also not an opportunity to answer questions. Staff or the consultants are not here to answer questions. We're here to listen. We're here to receive tonight. That's the primary focus of the meeting. So we'll say a little bit more about that as we progress through as we work through the slides, and then I'll tee us up when we get through the slides and get ready for the public comment period, reminding you about the speaker cards and the purpose of the meeting. Also, I'm going to call Jane up now, and she's going to walk through the rest of the slides, and you'll see there are a couple slides in there that talk about what is the scope and content of an EIR, and she'll lay out what those issues are, and that will help tee you up for your public comment period. With that, let me introduce Jane Shanley, who will walk us through the rest of the slides.
Thank you, Sean.
Oh, I don't think there's anything wrong with clapping. Absolutely not.
Okay. So, good evening. My name is actually Judy. So,
oh, I am
first
so
letter
sorry.
Right, but that's fine. Jane Bierce is the traffic consultant. But my name's Judy Shanley, and I'm the president and principal project manager at David Powers and Associates. We're environmental consultants, and we are under contract to the city to prepare the environmental impact report, or EIR, for the project. And as CEQA consultants, our role is to provide an objective analysis and evaluation of a project's environmental impact. So we are not project advocates, nor are we opposed to projects. And so, as Sean had mentioned, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to elicit your comments and tell us what issues you're particularly concerned about and make sure that we evaluate those in the EIR. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the environmental review process is and what an EIR is. So CEQA was adopted into law in 1970. It's the California Environmental Quality Act. CEQA process is a disclosure process that ensures that decision makers and the public are aware of the environmental impacts of a proposed action. The process enhances public participation and also coordination between agencies. So CEQA requires agencies to identify the significant environmental impacts of their actions. It requires them to avoid or reduce or mitigate those impacts if feasible. And also, lastly, to disclose to the public why they choose to approve a project if it would result in significant environmental effects. So an environmental impact report, or EIR, is the most complex and lengthy type of report prepared under the California Environmental Quality Act, and it's an informational document. So in addition to identifying mitigation measures to reduce impacts, it also includes an evaluation of a range of feasible alternatives to a project that would attain most of the basic objectives of the project, but would also avoid or substantially lessen the adverse environmental effects of the project. So a specific plan is a tool for the systematic implementation of a general plan. And the current general plan for the city allows the following uses on the site. And that is what we are evaluating in the EIR as the project. 600,000 square feet of commercial use, 2 million square feet of office, 339 hotel rooms, and 800 dwelling units. So the EIR will also study alternatives to the project, and these may include an occupied or re-tenanted mall, the general plan build out with maximum residential density, which may have approximately about 2,600 or 2,640 units in addition to office and retail and hotel space, and also potentially a retail and residential alternative that would have no office. So as a part of the environmental impact report, we'll be looking at a wide range of issues and how the project may affect those issues, all related to the environment, the physical environment. And those, this is a lengthy list of all the separate issues that are covered. Cultural resources, that also includes tribal resources in addition to historic and archaeological resources. We're looking at both long-term and short-term impacts of the project, and we're aware of the community's concerns, particular concerns regarding traffic, aesthetics, biological resources, which in this case would be the trees on the site, land use compatibility, public services, including police, fire protection, and schools, utility capacity, and others. So this side summarizes the different steps in the EIR process, including all the, which most of them are also opportunities for public input. So the Notice of Preparation, or NOP, that is a brief document that's circulated to the public for 30 days, and that tells people that, and agencies, that the city is preparing an EIR. It gives a description of what the project description is that's being addressed, and agencies and individuals can write comments describing or commenting on what issues they think should be covered. And during that 30-day period, the city also holds a public scoping meeting, and that's where we are tonight. And so it's another opportunity. If people don't want to write comments, they can give them verbally, and we'll be taking down notes, or you can provide both verbal and written comments. So once the scoping is completed, then we prepare the administrative draft and draft EIR, going through a couple different iterations with city review. And the draft EIR is circulated for 45 days to the public. And once the circulation period is complete, we will be assisting the city in providing responses to comments that are received on the EIR document. We'll be making any necessary text revisions, and that altogether becomes the final EIR. And once the final EIR is prepared and circulated for 10 days, then the city then holds public hearings and considers the project along with certification of the EIR. So this is a graphic representation of the schedule for both the public outreach and community involvement portion, developing the specific plan options, and the EIR process is at the bottom. And we are in the third square to the right in the bottom green portion. So, circled now, I think. So giving some dates to the process, the NOP is circulating for 30 days, and that 30-day period will conclude on March the 12th. The scoping meeting is tonight. The draft EIR is estimated to be available for circulation in late spring to early summer. The final EIR would be available in late summer, and the public hearings are anticipated to occur in late summer, early fall. With that, take it back to Sean.
Very good. Thank you, Judy. I'll get that right. Okay, so as you look at the screen there, and we're going to get ready for public comment here in just a moment, those are, as Judy indicated, those are the issue areas that the consultant and staff would like you to comment on. As a scoping meeting, what you're doing is you're providing input to staff and the consultant about what goes into the EIR. What should the consultant and staff pay attention to? So those are the items that we'll be looking for public comment on. I'm going to move forward on one other. I'll come back to this at the very end for the wrap-up segment in terms of what can happen afterwards, and I don't want to give the impression that tonight is the only opportunity that you have to comment on the scope of the EIR. You can continue to comment, and you'll see the deadline right up to March 12th. Okay, so I have some speaker cards here that I'm going to get ready to give names, and I'll call off about 4 or 5 names, and I'll ask you to queue up here at the microphone, and you'll see the timer here, and each speaker gets 2 minutes. As Judy indicated, we're taking notes and listening and capturing all the comments that are provided tonight. So first off tonight, and I'll just indicate the names here. Paul, and I'm going to have trouble reading these, and there might be some pronunciation, so I apologize in advance. Paulette Atmanir, please line up. Abdukar Najia, please line up. John Phelan, please line up. And Jennifer Griffin. And when we get ready for the speaker, are we set with the clock over here? Yes. Okay, we are ready.
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to provide input. My input is a little bit different from a lot of what people tend to provide at these meetings. We're at a point in our country where building a 10-mile road in the county can take 20 years due to bureaucracy, lawsuits, and a lot of other delays. The EIR process is often the focal point of these costly inefficiencies. We often seem to operate as if the more process we create and the more bureaucracy we create, the better our output will be. The result is often paralysis, very high costs, and a lower benefit to the community. So my hope is that here, in the home of Apple in Cupertino, we will be smart and we will be efficient in the way we approach the EIR process. I hope we can leverage the work done on the Apple campus and on Main Street. But most important, I hope that we will not just focus on zero-sum thinking and on negative thinking about problems. I hope we will innovate in considering game-changing transit options and high-density multi-generational housing and the positive impacts to our community as well. Thank you.
Excellent, very good, thank you. And if you would, please, you could announce your name before you speak. That would be great. Thank you.
Sure. My name is Abu Bakar, NDI. I'm here representing Working Partnerships in Silicon Valley Rising.
Excellent.
We're a coalition of labor, community, and faith groups coming together to try to make a tech economy that works for everyone. I'm here to ask for the site plan that will include the maximum amount of housing with the maximum amount of affordable housing at the site. Doing so would help mitigate the environmental impacts caused by the current jobs and housing imbalance in the city and in the region. Building housing affordable to service workers especially means that working families will be able to live and work in Cupertino instead of having to drive in from Hollister, Los Baños, and Salinas. Companies and the city of Cupertino can no longer externalize its service and labor costs to other cities. This would help achieve trip internalization and lower VMT goals to help us reach our greenhouse gas reduction goals. Also, I want to make a point that making sure that the jobs that are created at the Vallco site are good paying quality union jobs that can help with lowering commutes and trip lengths as folks would be able to afford to live a little closer to work. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Before you start, I'll ask Stephen Scharf to queue up, please, and Keith Warner.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is John Phelan. I too would like to say I think the most important issue here is the single issue, the amount of housing we're going to build. We simply do not have enough. I know things like traffic and the character of the environment are very important to us, but I really think if you look at the fortunate people who bought a house at this period of time before the value really shot up, I think these people are really unfortunate, because who will take care of you when you're in an emergency and you get an ambulance? You know, who will be around your Christmas table? These people have to live somewhere. Our friend is a doctor who moved out of state our friend is out of state studying to be a doctor, but she doesn't want to come back here because of the price. Simply building enough housing is the one issue that we have to tackle here in the Vallco plan to move us towards a place where California is somewhere we can live long term. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, John.
Good evening, City. I'm Jennifer Griffin. I've lived in Rancho Rinconada since 1985 when I worked at Tandem Computers after college at San Jose State. There's been a lot of changes in this area. I rode the 23 bus up and down Stevens Creek Boulevard to San Jose State for 2 years, and I used to stop at Vallco on the way. Very excellent mall. We need retail back in the city. You know, I do most of the purchasing for my household. I take care of elderly parents who live in the area, and they all have homes. One lives 30 miles away. I'm on 17. I came back today on 17 in the rain. So yes, we go and we buy, but I'm having to shop at Capitola Mall because we have no retail in the city. Also, I wanted to talk about Perimeter Road. I'm very familiar with Perimeter Road. Right now, Sand Hill does not own all of the Vallco site. The area behind the former Penny's is now owned by a group that has put in a Hyatt, a very high-end Hyatt with lots of TOT for the city. And then the property that is behind the former Macy's is owned by a different property owner. We need to make sure that Perimeter Road stays intact on the property so that these properties, other properties, can be accessed by the public. Unless Apple wants to really open up their property, which has access, their campus has access on the east side of Perimeter Road. Anyway, I think it's really important we look at what happens to Wolf Road, because we have a lot of things going on Wolf Road from Stevens Creek Boulevard to Homestead. We need to make sure that Heart of the City is respected in Cupertino as a Cupertino entity. No other city has Heart of the City. We need to protect the trees and make sure that any traffic that comes off and parking, make sure that this property can park their people on their property and not in the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Hi, Steve Sharp speaking only for myself. The one issue that I'm very concerned about is that the Apple campus is not yet occupied, the new Apple campus 2. So I'm very concerned about how traffic will be evaluated at all the intersections when we really have no idea of what the impact will be in terms of degrading the quality of those intersections. I know that I heard that Apple is worried that it will take 40 minutes from Wolf Road and 280 for an employee to drive, park, and get to their office in the new circular building, just because of the traffic and the amount of the distance from the parking garages into the building. So I would hope that the EIR scoping can look into somehow predicting accurately what the traffic will be, since we won't know, the campus won't be occupied when you do your studies. The other issue is, I know the general plan right now specifies 389 units, plus they can get a bonus for BMR housing. So, I would urge the EIR scoping to look at what the general plan says when you look at how much housing is allowed at that site, and don't go below or above what's currently allowed. Thank you.
Very good. And before we hear from Keith, let me call up Mooni, last name starts with an M, Liang Chow, and Eileen McLaughlin, please. Keith.
Hi, Keith Warner, resident and business owner. And there's some that say that Vallco should remain retail, all retail, and some even say in the existing structure. What I'd really like to see is a study of the traffic impact of the scenario if Vallco was 100% leased up, as it sits today, but with the popularity similar to Valley Fair. I think that would be a really good traffic impact study to do. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you.
Is it Mooni?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Mooni Patel. I live in Cupertino, so I've been here for 6 years. My ask is, traffic should be the #1 concern. So I know quite a few people that are not in Cupertino, but they live somewhere nearby. They don't come to Cupertino because of the traffic situation, right? I know parents that play with my kids, on the same volleyball league and all that, and so they don't want to come to Cupertino because of the traffic. In fact, I heard from a dentist that his business is suffering because his clients are not wanting to come to Cupertino because of the traffic, right? So in the last 6 years, I live on a street that feeds 3 schools. So for me to back into the street used to be difficult only during the school times, like morning 45 minutes and the evening 45 minutes. Rest of the time, I was able to back into the street and drive around. Now, over 6 years, traffic has gotten so bad that 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the evening, backing into the street is near impossible, right? So I would highly encourage EIR to do a real thorough study of traffic, right? And that should be the #1 concern, because this place is becoming unlivable because of the traffic. High density, anything there is not going to help the traffic. People might say, people work there and live there. That's just a fallacy, right? So people, you take any city, not more than 10% live and work in the same place, right? So you need to use the data and take into consideration that people are going to drive from that location to wherever they need to go to, right? We don't have mass transit at that location, so take all those things into consideration when you think about what should be the density. Because we as residents want this city to be livable. We want businesses here to thrive, not lose customers because they're afraid of traffic here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any option evaluated by the Vallco specific plan needs to be consistent with Cupertino general plan as it stands today, which is only include 389 units of housing, not 800. Your slide had a mistake. It's 389 maximum units of housing. And the 2 million square feet of office is provisional, pending on the approval of Vallco specific plan by May 31st, 2018, which is not likely to happen. So it's provisional, it's not an entitlement. And also, the notice of preparation listed these specific allocations. So if the EIR evaluate any option that's beyond the limit stated by the notice of preparation, for example, 2,000 units of housing, that would be illegal because you did not notify the Cupertino residents. Such option will be evaluated and people won't be able to comment on those options. And also, the RENA allocation for Cupertino is 1,002 units, not 3,000, not 4,000. The reason is there is no mass transit. If we go way beyond the allocated amount, we are going against the principle of regional planning. It's simply irresponsible. Regional planning set a different allocation amount for different city. It's not a requirement, it's a guideline, but then we shouldn't go build a few multiple times beyond that. And please evaluate the emergency response time. People's life depend on it when you add too much traffic. Thank you.
Very good. And before we hear from Eileen, let me call up Jason Uhlenkott and Ione Yuen. Eileen?
Good evening. I'm Eileen McLaughlin. The purpose of an EIR is to inform, and so the basis of my comments here is to help make that the best document we have for informing us all. What's important to me in this project is that there be a reasonable range of alternatives. We had a set of them put up there, one of them which is effectively what we call no action. One of them is doing nothing, just reopening, keeping it open as. And then one that was possibly a full development one and one other. But I would recommend that we try to have as many comparisons as we can as a basis, not just for comparing to one another, but to compare the impacts of one to another. So that we might have a full build out, we might have one that is pulled back in density, we might have one that varies the kinds of land uses. Then we can have charts that do things like compare the impacts of each of them on transportation, on traffic, on air quality, on greenhouse gases, and other impacts so that we can discern between them which ones have the most impact. And I would seriously hope that that's what happens here on this EIR, because it would answer many questions for the public. Great. I also would like to comment, because I am a resident of San Jose, just beyond Bollinger Road, where I am a mile and a half from the project. And transportation, traffic, needs to be evaluated for many intersections beyond just around the project itself. So those impacts are already spinning out there from Apple, and we need to look at how that's going to affect us. And finally, as an environmental advocate, I'm asking that bird-safe design be included in evaluating the biological resources for design. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Eileen. I should note before we hear from Jason that I only have 2 more speaker cards. This is great input. You're all making wonderful comments here, staying really nice within the EIR scope. So I invite you, fill out a speaker card. We're here. We're ready to listen. Jason, it's all yours.
Good evening. My name is Jason Uhlenkott, and my biggest environmental concern is that people can't live anywhere near where they work right now. Apple is a major employment center, and people are commuting a huge number of miles, and that means a huge carbon footprint from all the vehicle miles traveled. I would really like to see an opportunity for people to live closer to their jobs. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ione Yuen. I'm a resident of Cupertino. My 3 kids have gone through all the way through the schools. And so I'm a little bit concerned when I noticed that it said that there was going to be 2 million square feet of office space. From what I understand, Apple is 1 million square feet of Apple space. And their number that, when I went to their little visitor center, they said that will house 12,000 employees. So if we have twice that, that means we're going to have 24,000 employees coming into that, as well as the 12,000 from Apple. So that's 36,000 people that's going to be coming in that one freeway exit, which is my exit, how I get onto the freeway. And there are really only 3 exits in Cupertino that are actually Cupertino exits. And so to impact that many people at that one intersection is of concern. I'm sorry. Another issue with that is the parking. I think that since I've lived here, I've gotten personally very frustrated with the parking situation everywhere I go. I mean, to have a tea shop that has 3 parking spaces seems, that are labeled for that particular business isn't very friendly. And I also drive a minivan, and I can't get out of my minivan in the spaces that we have. So it is very frustrating. So I hope that whatever is decided, that there'll be adequate parking. And if some of that goes underground, I think that should be part of the EIR, that maybe, if we look into more parking underground. The other thing is the trees along the freeway, that I appreciate them because I know that they will filter out a lot of the from the freeway as well as the noise. So unfortunately, with some of the other projects where thought that the trees were going to stay and then they didn't, that was very disappointing. So we would really like to see, those biological inputs that are currently there that we all enjoy to remain or be adequately replaced. So I guess my time's up. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Peggy Griffin, please, you can come up, and then Lisa Warren as well.
Hi, I'm Peggy Griffin, and I live by 280, and I would like you to include in the scope transportation, the noise, the air quality, the light, and not just between 3 and 7, because now rush hour starts at 5 in the morning. The noise goes up. We're over 60 decibels a lot of the time, and it's just getting worse. And the black particles that come from the freeway are horrible. So, and when you do the traffic study, go beyond Foothill. Go way out, because people are taking the side roads. They're cutting across. The other thing is that we have a high power line that follows 280 along the water thing. And when they added increased voltage, we couldn't get TV reception. So when you're adding housing and buildings and stuff, you're going to increase power. And so I want you to look at the impacts of that. Also, when it gets to be heavy traffic, our cell usage goes bad. Okay. So look at that and look at an extended period of time. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. We have Lisa Warren, and then Donessa Matowski, please, and Randy Shingao.
Hi, Lisa Warren, longtime Cupertino resident.
And could you stand just a little closer to the mic? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm losing my voice too. So I would like to comment that we've been through an EIR for the Vallco site, at least a meeting such as this, with public input a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, who knows, lose track. And I want to request that every comment was sent in then, and I know the city still has them, be added to the comment list for anything being considered for the project now. There's nothing that's changed. And at least then, there were specific concerns based on what was being suggested. Whereas tonight, there was no indication until a slide was shown earlier, 3 alternatives that are being considered. So how can people comment when they don't know what they're commenting on? I think that's a concern. And I heard it said that there is a law, a requirement of a 30-day period for people to comment. I suggest that the March 12th date be extended to 30 days from today, since today is the first day there's been any indication as to what the heck you're looking at. I really wasn't going to speak because I prefer to send my things in. There's not much that gets accomplished doing it this way. I don't even know who's taking notes, and I guess you could watch the recording. But those are my comments at this time. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Donessa, if Donessa's here. And then we have Randy after that, and Anton Chen, please.
Hi, my name is Donessa Techmansky. I'm a 30-year Cupertino resident. I'm also confused because my understanding was that the 2 million square feet of office at Vallco was provisional and due to expire in May of this year. Anyhow, I'm extremely concerned about air quality within 1,000 feet of the freeway, specifically because of its effects on lung development in young children and the growing data that points to a 25% increase in dementia for the elderly, as well as other detriments as outlined in the USC studies. The housing element or any low-income housing should not be placed directly next to the freeway. That said, I'd like to see air quality measurements at peak traffic hours in that 1,000-foot corridor. Additionally, I keep hearing that people say that Vallco is going to capture Apple employees, but from my knowledge, 90% of people do not live in the same city where they work. In any case, I think it's critical to poll Apple employees to see if any of them actually have any interest in living at Vallco, and if so, what kinds of housing they would require, so that we're not basing traffic reductions of people living near where they work on assumptions.
Very good, thank you, Donessa. I have Randy up next, and then Anting, please, Chen.
Yeah, just about transportation. I bought a house in 1980. At the time I was working in Palo Alto, and within a few months I got a job on Vallco Parkway, and I was there from 1980 to 1996. And then my work moved to Mountain View. So the whole time I never moved, but for a while I was really fortunate to only, live about a mile from work. I think that's pretty typical. People buy their houses where they can afford them or where they want to buy them, and they don't tend to move with their jobs. Maybe maybe if they move up the peninsula, but not if they're within 20 or 30 miles. I know people that live in Fremont that live in Cupertino. They didn't start out doing that, but. The other thing I want to bring up is, traffic and things like that, air pollution, are really things that people notice, okay? But the other aspects of growth are things like water, sewage, and things like that. Now, I'm worried about the water supply, and most people don't know it, but the Santa Clara Valley Water District has built a tertiary water treatment plant. And people don't know what that really means, but what it really means is the goal of a tertiary water treatment plant is to have toilet to tap water. The water leaves a tertiary water treatment plant, goes directly into your tap. Into the drinking water supply. And that's what's going to happen to enable this growth. You're going to have things like that, and you may not like it, but you're not going to get your water any other way.
Thank you. Randy? And Joan Qin can come up, please, too.
Hi, my name is Anton, and
sorry,
everyone's
Anton.
made great points so far, but one thing I really want to add is that for this EIR, we really want to look to the traffic trends in the future. So I work at a self-driving car company, and I know we're going to have self-driving cars within the next couple of years, or definitely within the next decade. So we want to take into account how that will impact traffic. I don't know if people will even be owning cars a decade from now, but whatever we build here is going to be around for decades, maybe like tens of decades. So whatever we build, I want you guys to look into how people are doing transportation in the future, not just do your report based on how things happen. So look into self-driving cars, look into the car ownership rates of my generation, and look into how often people are using stuff like Uber and Lyft instead of driving. And yeah, basically think about the future when you're doing your EIRs. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Anton. Joan?
Hello, my name is Joan Qin. I just have a couple of points. One that really hit me when I saw the schedule for the EIR, all the little components and the ones that include the public input. I remember when I saw the presentation from Opticos that there were going to be a lot of linkages between the Opticos process and the EIR process, and that gave me the idea that the EIR was going to be responsive to what was being proposed for the specific plan. And yet it seems that what's being studied instead is one extreme, another extreme, and something in the middle, not even really in the middle. And so there's an imbalance and a lack of reciprocity that I see in what's been mentioned in regard to the EIR. A small point to make, and perhaps the traffic people know this and perhaps they don't. When you study the traffic in Cupertino, there's a big difference between Wednesdays and the other four of the weekdays, and in terms of the time that traffic gets intense because of late start schools. So that's something to be aware of. Don't be studying an intersection near schools on a Wednesday and think you're getting it for the whole week.
Very good. Thank you, Joan.
I'm a Cupertino resident for many years. I just want to echo a couple of ideas from my neighbors, great ideas, and add one more. This wasn't even the neighbor's idea, but I think currently part of the plan is to look at an option that has no office. The initial kickoff meeting, we saw that a lot of people don't want office there, so that's good to have that. Re-tenanting what's already there, as my neighbor Keith Warner pointed out, that's a good idea, and that's currently part of the plan. I want to applaud Eileen McLaughlin for suggesting many options to look at and compare what we've going on here. Steve Scharf recommended one more option, and that is looking at 389 housing units, as is currently in the general plan. He also suggested thinking about what's going to happen when Apple Campus 2 is finally tenanted. And finally, I'd like to suggest one more, this is my ask, one more option, and that is to look at retail only. I didn't see that as any of the options, but because the 2 million square feet office and 389 housing units were provisional allocations subject to maybe be taken away at the end of May of this year, I think that looking at retail only is a necessary option. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I do not have any more speaker cards, and I want to invite whoever would like to speak to come forward. Do we have anybody else who would like to offer comments? Yes. I just want to applaud. You're all doing a great job in terms of staying within the scope of the meeting, and so it's very valuable. And if you're just sitting there thinking, maybe I should speak, maybe I shouldn't, I'm going to encourage you to err on the side of speaking. Okay, you're up.
Okay, some random thoughts. So I have been a resident of Cupertino for 22 years. I'm looking at these EIR alternatives that you have. I'm concerned about the second one. It says general plan build out with maximum residential density being 2/3 residential and 1/3 non-residential mix. And I think some of the people here will understand why the 2/3 residential is concerning me. So Vallco is adjacent to the I-280 freeway with over 200,000 vehicles per day. That is 265,000 commuters are heading to San Francisco daily. The air pollution needs to be monitored at the site before placing residents there. We're in an education-focused community, and the negative effects on cognitive ability, cardio health, and lung health must be studied. Monitors were placed in Monte Vista area for 3 years, and I would like that here. The recycled water capacity only barely met Apple Park's needs. The recycled water line needs to have actual capacity studied because the Donald Summers tertiary treated water is very expensive to produce, it is resident subsidized, and potable water is added in to meet demand. Creating the tertiary treated water generates pollution. Please determine that the project will be adding. I don't think they have an air quality study yet for Donald Summers for their expansion that they're doing. Apple Park balanced cut and fill. Measure D had 2.2 million cubic yards, which would take months of excavation, and it's going to be hauled out on our streets by diesel trucks. And I think that needs to be looked at because that's going to generate not just a lot of air pollution, but you're going to have debris all over the road. And there were, one of my neighbors broke her hip bicycling on Tantau when it got really slick there. So please look at that as well.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Vinod Balakrishnan. I live pretty close to the Vallco Park. I've been driving along Wolf, Homestead, and North Blaney in peak hours for last 16 years. I have noticed that traffic on Wolf and Blaney and Homestead probably went up at least tenfold in the last 10 years.
Good. And could you speak up just a little bit so we can hear you?
The traffic has gone up in at least tenfold in the last 10 years. Just to cross a stop sign on North Blaney and Merritt, you have to wait for at least 20 cars between 5:30 and 6:30 p.m. This is a reality now. This is even before opening Apple Park. The situation is not better if you're driving along Wolf Road from El Camino Real. That's all I have to say about the traffic. There's one more point. Please look at the Silicon Valley statistics. How many people live and work in the same city? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Herb Knösel. I'm living close to Vallco, less than a mile away. And almost every day I hike 5 kilometers, I'm going metric, around the perimeter of Vallco from the left side. And when I return, I go Vallco Parkway, little shops there, housing atop. I hit Main Street, and I love Main Street. Now it is almost finished, and I've heard many comments when it was half finished that it is stupid, and I hope that Vallco will be a continuation of Main Street. And I think, my opinion is, it has to have housing, most hopefully also affordable housing, shopping, but I have not heard many people talking about office space. And I think in order to subsidize housing, affordable housing, the developer has to make some money. He has to get a return on his investment. And I think he needs to have office space too. And in addition, that's my opinion, I don't know if I'm right, if we have office space, it is also tax revenue for the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, other speakers? Other comments? Make sure nothing gets unspoken here. And as I mentioned, you have that opportunity on the speaker card, on the back side of that card, to provide written comments. And please, the box is in the lobby for the written comments. So I'm going to wait just a second if there's anybody else who wants to speak. Let me back up here and just remind you about the schedule in terms of where we are. So here we are at our scoping meeting tonight. The comments that you provided tonight have been recorded, and there's lots of note-taking going on here, so they will be incorporated and addressed in the draft EIR. Other comments that were made tonight that were not specific to the EIR will be considered, still recorded, and will be considered in the specific plan that, of course, comes after the EIR. And there's also, as you know, on the website, there's an FAQ questions, and so to the extent that there were questions asked tonight, they can be incorporated into the FAQs. So you have the draft EIR circulation coming up later this spring, early summer, and then the final EIR in late summer. And there are opportunities for public comment during those periods, especially on the final EIR, which has to be sanctions, has to be approved by council, and there'll be a public comment at that point, and then you'll see public hearings specifically around that EIR. I see another speaker card. So Jian Farr, please, if you're ready to speak, we're ready for you.
Hello, I grew up in Cupertino, and I spent a lot of time in Vallco Mall growing up. And now that, and you know, I saw it like, you know, basically like die. And now that like it can be turned into something else, I see it as a great opportunity to like house people of like my generation who like, you know, now that the housing prices are so high, we're like all being pushed out of the area. And I see that a lot of people have legitimate concerns about transportation and air pollution, but I think that, you know, these are problems, and it's not like we can't tackle them. I think that there could be like solutions that the city can maybe help with, maybe like more public transit. Like, I don't see why it has to be an immovable mountain. Like, as someone said earlier, as Anton said earlier, like we are getting like new technologies, and like a lot of problems that people thought were like unsolvable before. I think with new technology, with maybe some help from the city, with some help from our government, we can solve these problems. It doesn't have to be horrible for the people who live next to the highways as it is now. It doesn't have to like cause people to be stuck in their homes, unable to like pull out of their driveways. I think that we have to like consider the future and all the possibilities.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael. I've lived in the area my entire life. I currently live and work in Cupertino. And one thing I thought should be added to the scope is to consider the employment of people who live in the new kind of Cupertino housing complexes. I know there's a stat that only 10% of Cupertino residents work in Cupertino, and I believe the stat, but I live in a area close, a housing complex in Cupertino that's relatively new, and basically 100% of my neighbors who I've spoken to either work at Apple, Kaiser, go to De Anza, or work at Seagate. So the percentage that I see is a lot higher, so if possible, maybe to add part of the scope of the EIR should be to look at those types of housing complexes and see in those complexes what percentage of those people work in Cupertino, because that seems like a win-win that could help the housing situation as well as reduce traffic and pollution and all those things that we all care about. So I just think that should be included in the scope of the EIR.
Great, excellent, thank you. Thank you. Okay, other speakers? Hearing none, we'll move towards wrap up here. And so you, as I mentioned several times, on the back of the speaker card for written comments, put those in the box in the lobby. And let's say something occurred to you after tonight. As you heard, the public comment period for this portion of the EIR is open till March 12th. And please email your comments, and there's the email address there, or you could deliver those in hard copy to City Hall. And again, the deadline is March 12th at 4:30 p.m. So, one more time on speakers to make sure we're not missing anybody here. That wraps up our meeting then tonight. So we are concluded the meeting, and thank you so much for coming, and look forward to your continued involvement in this project. Thank you very much.